Pacifico is a Mexican lager brewed to be discovered. It's like fresh tracks on a powder day. Like that uncharted trail a stone's throw away. Like the perfect wave on a sunny day. Pacifico. Find your own way. 21 plus. Drink responsibly. Imported by Crown Imports, Chicago, Illinois.
Now more than ever, Lowe's knows you don't just want a low price, you want the lowest price. And with our lowest price guarantee, you can count on us for competitive prices on all your home improvement projects. If you find a qualifying lower price somewhere else on the same item, we'll match it. Lowe's, we help, you save. Price match applies to same item, current price at qualifying retailers. Exclusions and terms apply. Learn how we'll match price at lowes.com/lowest price guarantee.
To get the Crime Writers on After Show right now, go to patreon.com/partners in crime media.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, new homes along Arizona's mountain preserve are set ablaze. Is it the work of eco-terrorism or something more personal? We'll talk about the podcast, The Arsonist Next Door. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
Also with us, private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of The Final Curtain, Laura Bricker. Hi, Laura.
Hey, and I'm the last of the Crime Writers On team here to have a high school graduate. So now none of us have little kids anymore.
Facts. That's right, Laura. We're old. And finally, our captain of all things cynical, author of the City trilogy of novels, host of Rip Current, Strange Arrivals, Ancient Phalians, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast host, Toby Ball. Hi, Toby.
Hey, Rebecca.
So, Kevin.
Yes.
This is Monday's program.
It is.
What's coming up on Thursday's show?
On Thursday, we're talking about the 3-part series from ABC News Studios, streaming now on Hulu. It's called Hey Beautiful, Anatomy of a Romance Scam.
Ah. So, Laura, quick follow-up question for you.
Yeah.
What is the potential timing on actual empty nesthood for you?
That is an interesting question. I think it's going to be August 25th.
Really?
An actual hard date.
Yeah. Well, he'll be moving up to Laconia to go to the 2-year fire science program, August 25th. And then, I don't know, it's a brave new world.
It is. It is. I tell you, empty nesthood rules. It's super, like you spend all this time when your kids are growing up thinking, I don't know what I'll do when they leave. I'll be so sad.
Right.
I won't be able to what my heart be full of or whatever. I'll miss them so much. It's literal. I mean, our kids call us and Teddy stopped by today or whatever, but it is the best. Like you can just be like, let's go out to dinner. Okay, let's go.
You can poop with the door open.
That's right. You can have sex loudly if you want. You can do whatever you want. And it's just like, you know, we always like going out to dinner or whatever, but like you don't have to worry about, do I need to bring something home for this other person you don't have to do any of that. It's amazing.
You can have loud sex.
You can have loud sex. I mean, who says I'm not doing that? No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, the thing is, I've had like kind of a I've had a unique kind of segue into this because I've essentially been a half-time empty nester now for a few years.
Yeah, same.
Because Will has lived in like an in-law apartment at my former house, but then he comes to my house for lunch and dinner every day. So
yeah, that doesn't count as half-time empty nesting, Laura, if you're feeding somebody.
But I don't really have to do much. I'm
Gotcha.
like, here's some meat. Eat it. Like, is there enough chicken here? Because now he lifts weights all the time because he wants to be sure he can like carry that pack for the fire gear. So he's like, I need more protein. I'm like, here's some chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, finally, one thing I'll say about it, your toilet stays cleaner and there's way less laundry to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And the groceries you buy are still there when
That's
you
right.
go for
Oh
them.
my
Yeah.
God. We have that conversation all the time. I'm like, oh, look, Will was here because the chips that I just bought, the entire bag is gone.
Yes. You can buy Nutter Butters safely now if you'd like.
Oh, boy.
All right. Should we talk about the thing that we're supposed to be talking about, Kevin?
Let's do it.
All right. Let's get that done. Leading off.
You're going to hear crackling. You're going to hear crashes and stuff like that. You can actually hear the wind moving too, because fire needs oxygen to burn.
In 2000, a series of luxury homes built on the edge of a Phoenix mountain preserve were set ablaze. Graffiti left at the scene hinted that the fires were the work of eco-terrorists, taking a stand against new construction and residential development.
Standing before the burnt remains, Lee gazes across at the neighboring streets, full of single-family houses in neat rows.
I remember looking at the houses and thinking, whoever it is lives there or knows somebody there, because somebody has to be watching to know this guy left a few minutes early that day.
After a bombshell newspaper interview with the arsonist shook the investigation, police lured a potential suspect into a trap. He was known as an upstanding citizen, but cops enlisted the help of his best friend to get a confession.
Did he do the interview? Did he write the letters? Is he acting alone? Did he set the fires? I knew the questions. I had them in my head. I had it rehearsed. I just wasn't emotionally prepared for the answers.
From Sony Music Entertainment and Novel Audio comes The Arsonist Next Door. Emerald Triangle host Sam Anderson talks to key players in the 2000 hunt for the firebug. He also searches for the real motivation for the fires, one more personal than political. Spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about plot points from The Arsonist Next Door. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. So, Toby, you made an interesting note about the point of view throughout the season. I'm curious what you meant by that.
So I'm not exactly sure how to characterize it. It's not necessarily that it's like politically conservative, but it feels like sort of inclined towards sort of social conservatism or whatever. So for instance, he talks about how there was a woman who worked for a fire department and she was sort of pegged by her fellow firefighters as a potential suspect because she was into doing things outdoors and going mountain biking.
Yes.
Which they found was weird. And he doesn't push back on it, right? He just kind of reports it.
Yeah.
And that to me just seemed insane.
Yeah, what a granola hugging tree person that is,
Can
right?
you imagine going outside? Suspicious.
Ride your mountain bike, burn a building.
Yeah, so I think that the scene setting of Arizona, I agree with you, Toby, is not necessarily done super well. And there's an opportunity there, especially Arizona in 2000. You know, Arizona is a really interesting place politically. It's an interesting place in terms of ideology. It certainly is an interesting place when you come to like preserve land because it's booming there, right? And he does get into that a little bit. Laura, when you heard we were covering a podcast about arson, how did you, as the former wife of a arson investigator and fire chief, feel about just this whole topic generally?
Well, I do think arson is kind of an interesting crime to look at. You know, I've always found it kind of fascinating what the sort of psychology is of people that set fires. Like I remember having, you know, when I was a reporter, learning about how, when there's a fire and you see the police out there with their little video camera, it's because often the arsonist is going to return to the scene either for the satisfaction of seeing it or the sexual component to it. So like I remember one time they videotaping the scene and they caught this man in the audience pleasuring himself because he was so excited and there, boom, he's on the camera. So I'm always fascinated by, number one, like, you know, you look at different things that people, like different types of crimes, like who is it that starts fires and why do they do it and what goes into that? And also like, how do they do it? It's like, you go to any of the initial trainings, and I always love hearing about how potato chips are like the ideal way to start a fire because they're like super accelerant and then they disappear.
All right, Laura, way to give us a tip on how to,
you know,
burn down a house.
So I was like, okay, arson. But then I'm
what
like,
exactly is Will doing with those bags of potato chips?
Hopefully eating them.
Is it like an assignment for his new fire service studies?
Yeah,
okay.
to go and see how quickly they torch up. So yeah, I'm like, arson, this is interesting. But then I hear this, I'm like, okay, so this is like a 20-year-old serial arson case that maybe might have some sort of crusade about the wilderness and not, you know, open space. But also I hate to be the one who always says, but I'm like, is there something like, what is the perspective we're going to gain now 20 years later, other than a retelling of this case that has already been pretty widely covered in the media, right?
Yeah.
I didn't buy that for a second.
What's that?
The whole thing about this environmental aspect, you know, that this was anything other than one person.
Yeah, why?
I don't know. Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's easy to say 20 years later, like, oh, I guessed it. But, well, first of all, you know, you're like, well.
So it's called The Arsonist Next Door, not The Arsonists Next Door.
There you go. There you go. I mean, I thought sort of for the podcast, I thought like it was kind of slow in the beginning, right? Because it seemed to be a pretty much like a paint by numbers kind of arson crime story. I think Firebug might have been one that we did. So, I'm trying to say, okay, well, what's different? So I did not believe the whole we are coming from, you build, we burn. To me, it was just like too obvious a thing to try to be a ploy, as if we're an organization that nobody's heard of.
And then it says, we are not done. Lee Benson, take your dream house out of the preserve. Security will be defeated again. We've been trained well. Thanks.
At least this fire and brimstone arsonist is polite.
I mean, that just seemed very kind of textbook, big giveaway a lot of times that somebody is by themselves and they want everyone to think that they're a larger group. I'm looking at you, John Benet Ramsey killer, in your note.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Interesting connection there.
Yeah, we are, whatever, what do they say? Someone's going to tweet at me, but we are a conglomerate of people that know about you.
We want $142,000.50.
Yeah, whatever it was. Yeah. It wasn't really until we get to episode 3 that I started thinking, okay, there's something fresh about this story here. And those were the things that I found interesting. But the first two were pretty foundational.
I don't know. I mean, to me, it just sounded like NIMBYism, frankly. I mean, we had a really big arson case in our tiny town when I first moved here, like in the very early 2000s, where people had donated, a couple had donated $1 million. And then there was also like a bond to build a senior center. And it was like almost built, and someone burned it down and spray painted, not with my tax dollars on the side of it. And it was like, I wonder what the motivation here was. If you've ever been to one of our town meetings, you'll understand that someone would actually set a fire around that. But Toby, one of the things that comes out is that eco-terrorism being a prevailing thing that the FBI was concerned about in the 90s. I don't agree with that. I remember people being afraid of brown-skinned people from overseas in the 90s just as much as they were after 9/11. What did you think about that assertion that eco-terrorism was this prevailing focus of the FBI?
Well, they said that eco-terrorists were the number one domestic threat to the U.S., and this is less than 5 years after Tim McVeigh and Oklahoma City.
Yep.
So it's just on the face of it, it's just ridiculous. I think it points to, the political bent of the FBI for the most part. And I had sort of a sinking feeling when he said that, and he doesn't push back. And it seems like he's actually being like, no, this is like a serious thing. Like they were the number one threat. Like this is like a big terrorist thing that's going on. But the reality is nobody had been killed by eco-terrorists. It was property damage. He says later, it seems like that our law enforcement is sometimes more worried with property than with people's lives, which I think is accurate. But that comes at the very, very end. During the setup, he makes it seem like eco-terrorism is this dire, dire threat. Like I could see why, the person who did it might want to point towards them just because that was sort of the perception at the time. And there had also been about 10 years before a pretty famous bust of a guy who was part of Earth First by the FBI. And, this guy Lee is building a house on the edge of a nature preserve. So it's not hard to imagine some person who's very environmentally sensitive thinking that like really rich people building right next to a preserve is sort of offensive.
But wasn't his house just next to other houses that were also next to the preserve?
I mean, they don't make that clear. I assume that it was like encroaching closer to it.
Yeah.
I don't, was he at the end of the block? Then the next thing was like gazelles. I don't know. But it's the same. It's sort of a piece with the mountain biking thing and some other stuff that he talks about, which it's, kind of taking this sort of official narrative coming from law enforcement or fire department or whatever, and sort of just reporting it without pushing back.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that Toby had every single point in the note that I made was going to say about this.
Oh.
So I put my hand like slowly down. Let's see here. FBI, Waco, domestic terrorists, prioritize property over people. It's all there, except the thing you missed is that we talked about this in the podcast, Burn Wild.
Yes.
And that's the only thing I can add to that. But it is silly because, yeah, you're right. I mean, we blew up a courthouse and we find out there's all these militias running around that are anti-government. And like, yeah, but, these guys setting fires.
Yeah.
Yeah, they set a fire on a ski thing thing in Vail.
Yes. They should die for that. They should absolutely get the electric chair for that. And I will say, you should listen to our discussion about Burn Wild if you want to hear me and Kevin argue a little bit about eco-terrorism. And Toby, too. We had a little debate around it because the world literally is burning. And they're just trying to wake people the fuck up. Not saying it's right. I'm just saying I maybe understand it a little more than I understand other kinds of terrorism.
And that's a really good podcast, too. That'll bring up like a lot of the issues that we just hinted at in the last 30 seconds.
They're all in one of Toby's notes, so we really can't.
Yeah, exactly.
Laura Bricker, there's a journalism story here as the person who set the fires, ostensibly, reaches out and does an interview with a reporter at an indie paper that they publish. What are your thoughts about that?
I was like, oh, how fun. I would love to be that. But it was like, he was like a new reporter, this guy, James. And not only does he set up this clandestine meeting, but he like comes in disguise for the meeting. And it was interesting because you hear about this person that he goes to meet with, like basically bragging about how this is like, I'm on this, vendetta, this campaign, stop urban sprawl and do, and that it's, a group of mountain bike people that have joined together to protest.
If you don't look suspicious, suspicion isn't drawn to you, he said. One of our keys to success is how well we blend in. At one point, he said something like, what did they expect, for me to carry an Olympic torch? He struck me as arrogant, cocky, and kind of controlling.
Can you imagine just being at this meeting with this person who like comes in and you're just like, holy shit, I'm a new reporter. This is not like, this is what you dream reporting is going to be like. It's not going to be covering like town meetings. But then for that to kind of segue into now the police want him to like operate as like the arm of the law and give them the information and betray the source and all of this. And, the position that they put him in, where I know what I made when I was a young reporter, and he references it too. He's making like no money. He's got student debt. And then at the end, they're like, well, you could still write the story and get the reward money. And I'm like, seriously right now? So in this case, it was interesting because it was a new reporter. He's obviously not somebody
whose editor decides, I guess I'm just not going to go to this meeting.
Yeah.
Because it's not important.
Yeah. No, it was wild. And I'm like, can you imagine like being that reporter, but then also being put in this position where you're being kind of strong-armed by the police? Like the police can do their own job. I'm sorry. That's not our job to do the police's job.
You're right. I loved everything about that cloak and dagger scene in the park. And you're right. It really isn't a close call on whether a journalist should lure their subject into a police trap. But I did like how it also addressed the pressures that he felt, the real pressures of that principled stance, the real world thing that somebody could get killed in another fire if the police don't, have any, like, there's nothing to say that this would have solved the case, but yeah, that somebody could have been hurt, or like you said, that like he could have received this big reward. But your big reward is all the exclusive content that you get at Patreon.
Oh, yes. No need to go cloak and dagger. You can just go to our Patreon. You'll get so much stuff.
Yeah, at patreon.com/partners in crime media. You just give us a tiny bit of money that you don't have to get from the police. I don't care where you get it. If you get a reward, it's fine. But just for a small sustaining membership, you get all sorts of things like the Crime Writers on After Show.
Nice.
This week, got an incredible story. Laura Bricker, you're going to love this one.
Oh, good.
It has to do with me coming face to face with a black bear.
I never thought it would happen. I know you don't even go into the woods ever. I never thought this would happen to you.
And it happened on my deck.
Because you never go into the woods.
That's right. Other exclusive content includes our Married with Podcast Advice podcast, Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club, and Rebecca Lavoie's Readathon. And we're getting close to the end of the Karen Reed retrial.
Yep.
And Rebecca, I just want to very briefly, who was the most surprising witness to you?
The most surprising witness?
Yeah.
That would probably be Officer Kelly Dever of the Boston Police Department.
Is that Kelly Dever or Kelly Dever?
Well, you don't mispronounce her name, Kevin.
If you know, you know. Yes.
Oh, goodness. Yes, she was probably my most surprising witness. The Boston rookie cop, who was a cop in Canton, who was called in as a rookie Boston police officer to the commissioner's office alone. And he said about her testifying at this trial, just do the right thing. And we're supposed to interpret that according to her as he was just telling her to be completely honest
That's it. That's what always happens.
That's the way it usually works.
Yeah.
That's the way it always works. This case, man, it's crazy.
Laura, how would you love a case where a police officer says to somebody that she saw her boss and another cop, spend a wildly long
amount of
time with the key piece of evidence, and then later says, you know what, that was a false memory.
Yeah, it was a false. In good faith, I made a false memory.
A false memory.
After she had the conversation with the police commissioner.
Yeah, with all this stuff. I guess I remember that.
What the hell is going on? Oh my God.
That's why you got to join us to get all Rebecca's hot takes on that.
More than 100 episodes, by the way.
You can also get hot takes from Laura Bricker if you join at the Bricker scale, because she has her exclusive Leave It to Bricker podcast. Last time, she talked about the search for Zelda. We know that she's a pet detective. Her own cat got away, and physician heal thyself. She used her skills to bring Zelda home. Or did I just give it away?
No, Zelda is home, but now Zelda is living her best life because she got a taste of freedom. She ripped through a screen in my house last week, and I'm looking into some new pet detective technology, like little tracker collars for my cats.
Well, I can't wait for the next episode of Leave It to Bricker. She's always getting into crazy stuff. If you join us at the Let's Do What We Do level, you get episodes of Crime Writers on early and ad-free. And if you're a deep diver, then not only do you get all of that, but you also get to join Toby Ball when he meets with his guests to talk about the latest book in the deep dive. Last time, Toby met with Elon Green, Lauren Bright Pacheco, and Deb Shudica. And what was the book you talked about?
Keeping with the arson theme, it was American Fire.
That's it. I knew it, baby. American Fire. Which, not to be confused with American Prison, which was the one that he did before.
If you said American Fires, you may end up in an American Prison, but that was, they're otherwise not connected. But it's sort of a more compelling, series of arsons. I'm not sure if it's a more compelling piece of work, but if you have the firebug, that's another thing you can check out.
You have the firebug. Oh, my goodness gracious. Okay, all right. Well,
who doesn't?
Who doesn't?
No, I do. I set my college sorority house on fire by accident.
That's right.
Yeah.
Firebug.
Yeah, by accident. Was it potato chips?
No, it was a halogen lamp, which thankfully they don't sell anymore, I don't think.
Yeah, because of you, Bricker. All right. All that great stuff is at patreon.com/partners in crime media.
Hey, Kevin.
Yes.
Does that end our business section?
No more business.
Let's go ahead and fade that music out. Hey, Kevin, who's our next sponsor?
Our next sponsor is HelloFresh.
Hola, Fresco.
Springtime is all about spending time outside with good company and good food. Now, I'll tell you, okay, Rebecca, you just remember, I'm going to relive this trauma from yesterday.
Oh, boy.
So umpiring a baseball game.
You're an umpire.
The home team was up 12-4 going into the 6th inning.
Then what happened?
Well, the other team came back. After 4 pitching changes, a whole bunch of walks. I thought
a murder? Was it a murder?
It was a murder.
What happened? What was the final score?
It was 20-12. Nice. And I only bring this up because I thought I was going home to dinner, and then 45 minutes later, I had to leave.
So, you were starving.
I was starving. So, how do you start making dinner at that point? You really can't.
So easy when you've got HelloFresh in your fridge, though.
Absolutely. Some of the great meals that you can make fast. 10 minutes it takes. The cheesy chicken and bell pepper tacos.
Nice.
That was great. But they also have ready-made meals that you can make in 3 minutes, like the sweet sesame udon with chicken and red peppers. You just heat them and eat them.
I love udon.
But that doesn't mean you can't do some nice fancy stuff. Among the gourmet meals that I'm looking forward to making this week, sirloin in a mushroom sauce with caramelized onions? Oh, all right. Onion, mashed potatoes, and roasted carrots.
Nice. So feel great with meals that fit your spring schedule, even your spring umpiring schedule, and make the season even more delicious. Go to HelloFresh.com/CWO10FM.
10FM?
CWO10FM. Do that now to get 10 free meals with a free item for life.
10FM, okay.
1 per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as a discount on the first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. So, Kevin.
Yes.
I hear that you wanted this thing we're reviewing to be a little more elevated.
Yeah, just like my Quince wardrobe.
Oh, yeah.
As temperatures rise, it's the perfect time to refresh your wardrobe with not just summer essentials, but versatile pieces for every season ahead. Quince pieces are timeless, lightweight, and far more elevated than anything else at this price. Okay, ladies, I'm going to talk to you man to woman.
All right.
So I know how your man likes to go to that store and buy that T-shirt for 57 cents.
Yes.
And look, there is a place for that.
Is there?
Well, like when you're changing your air filter, or maybe when you're entering a wrestling ring and you want to tear it open.
Or when you've given up.
When you've just given up. Well, that's where Quince comes in, because you can buy great things like their European linen shirts. And the dresses, of course, for the ladies.
All
But
right.
those shirts, for $30, when you're planning for that 4th of July picnic that you have to go to, and he's going to wear some goofy T-shirt or something like that, get him a nice pair of Quince tops, linen shirts, some really cool shorts, and he's going to feel better, and you're going to be like, hey, this is my man. And he's going to like it later when you say, yeah, this was my man.
That's my man.
Well, give your summer closet an upgrade with Quince. Go to quince.com/crime for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/crime to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/crime.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
So, Toby, how do you feel about the arson victims in this story?
Well, I feel bad for anybody who has their place burned down. That's not fun. It's not fair. The people who you really kind of are introduced to is this guy, Lee, who we find out owns 3 aerospace businesses, has a Taekwondo gym, is a triathlete, and is in a, quote, hard rock band that's played over 1,000 gigs. He didn't play a brief bit of music, and it is certainly definitely not hard rock.
He's a man-child, I think, is what we're supposed to
He's got a lot of shit going on. I'm sure if you ran into him at a party, he'd be willing to talk to you about it at length.
This does not sound like a guy I'd like to know.
So it's just one of those things where it's it sucks to get your house burned down. This guy can obviously, he's fine. It's not like he's going to be living on the streets after this. You're also introduced to this other woman who, I don't think you find out exactly what she does, but she's talking about, we're going to build a new house, and it's going to be a symbol of how successful we were. I was successful. My husband was successful, so we're going to build a new house, and it'll be like the success house.
They totally voted for Carrie Lake. I'm just saying.
Yeah. And then, her thing gets burned. And again, there's no way you're not going to be upset and angry. But her thing is I'm all for the environment. I just don't, I want them to do their stuff in the right way, like petitions and, I'm like, look, they do that stuff and you built your house. It's, you like them to do that because you can ignore it and do whatever the fuck you feel like anyway. I mean, that's I get it, but that's the reality behind it. So anyway, again, if you're a victim, you're a victim, right? But
you're not saying they had it coming, in other words.
Yeah, not like the guy who was masturbating in the new. And I couldn't tell. I was like, is he making a little weird pun in the middle of this thing? Or is he actually thinking that this guy should do some time for masturbating in these empty houses, which seems like the ultimate victimless crime?
Defiled the house.
It is the ultimate victimless crime. An empty house. You're just doing it to yourself.
Hey man, that's probably about as good a place as you're going to be able to do it, as far as I'm concerned. There's nobody around. You're not bothering anybody.
I'd prefer walls, but okay.
Well, hey man, that's not what this guy's deal is.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, again, it feels I don't want to be some people deserve to be victims and some people don't deserve to be victims. But the people they pick to focus on just kind of came away as sort of, pretty happy with themselves and how successful they were. And I don't know. Again, I just kind of imagine running into them at a party and having to hear about how fucking awesome they were. And then when they finally do talk to an actual environmental activist, and he's like, I don't fucking care about whether some millionaire built a new house and it burns.
Worry about pollution.
That's the
what
least
are you
of
even
our
talking
concerns.
about? That kind of summed up my feelings.
We burned down a house. Well, I'll just build another one.
Exactly.
And he did.
Exactly.
So
Because we have a thing called insurance.
you're saying that you found it hard to make emotional connections to these people.
Yes, that's what he's saying.
Yeah, okay. All right.
So, Laura, what do you think of this sting operation? You have this rookie local cop who goes to work with the FBI because none of the men want to do it. And she ends up making a ton of dough in overtime and gets to sit in a storage container all day surveilling a fake construction site. Thoughts?
That was interesting. I felt like as I was listening to this, it was a little bit like Comedy of Errors, but it was kind of like, okay, so she's out there, she's brand new. They come up with this, okay, we're going to put this up. And then the person comes in and like leaves a note, but oh, wait, the camera isn't actually set up. Because they were like, he'll never come on the first night. So we'll have time to get that camera set up before we set up our fake construction site. And then when the person is there and she sees him, she's just like, she's so excited because, hello, this is like that reporter who's like out on this like clandestine meeting. She's so excited to see this guy that she can't call in the accurate description because she's like, he's wearing this, he's wearing that, blah, blah, blah. But I loved that she also still had the recording of herself from that. Like, what was that? Like,
Here's my biggest fuck up. Want to listen?
Dispatchers, you know where you at right now?
639 extra, do you have the 100 block?
And I'm like, I don't.
It's about,
I'm at the, just south, just go south on 32nd Street.
into 32nd Street.
The color of his clothes when she's watching it to a black and white feed.
I can't even listen to early episodes of this podcast, and she's listening to her like biggest career error.
Yeah. So it was just like one of those things you're like, okay, so this is a pretty big thing. So we're going to send out our most rookie person and like hope things work out and like maybe we'll get our camera figured out here eventually.
Oh,
so
she's the only one who volunteered.
Yeah.
All those other fuckers? No, I couldn't want to do that.
I don't want to do some interjurisdictional copping.
That's right. They're like, how come she gets all this overtime? Because she volunteered, numbnuts.
Yes, because she's not territorial about the stupid FBI like all you local cops seem to be in every TV show and apparently also in real life.
Still sounds like a cool assignment. I mean, it was dull, but yeah.
It does. You can read a book or catch a criminal. Either way.
Eat a lot of potato chips.
So, Kevin, we hear from after Mark is arrested and, claims that he was not the arsonist, but maybe did do some other less bad stuff. By the way, Warren cries still today talking about his friend being involved in this, which is kind of sad. But he ends up, they don't put any pressure on him, but they do show him something that makes him realize his friend may not be a good guy. And he hikes 8 damn hours into the freaking Grand Canyon with his friend wearing a wire. Thoughts?
Oh, well, there's a lot going on there. Yeah, so just like to back it up a second, I was immediately intrigued by the porn angle that as they're talking about...
Wait. Keep going. Never mind.
That when they made the arrest of Mark Sands for the, I guess, trespassing or whatever that was, that they were, what was that? They ended up like at one point like searching through his belongings, doing a search warrant, and they found a lot of pornography where, remember they were like, here's all the videos, don't fast forward, check them all out.
Yes.
Where he had interspliced with mainstream porn something.
Yes.
And that there's this very thinly veiled reference that he had a photo of somebody close to Warren in a weird thing, and it's probably...
Likely a kid.
Well, yeah, likely Warren's child. And, we hear later on in the final episode that he had like photos of neighbors' kids and things like that. So I was wondering why they glossed over that.
It's in the news, isn't it?
No, I mean, in that moment.
Yeah.
In that moment in the episode, they're going through all this stuff and they find all this and they drop it there. And the narrative point is they're like, this is the thing that gets Warren to get involved. But the whole thing about like this weird pornography thing never comes back until the final episode where, again, we find out more from like a neighbor that he had an unhealthy interest in her teenage daughter, and that they found, she saw
He's a pervert.
He's a pervert.
Yeah.
Right. And I was really interested about like, are those two separate criminal behaviors or do they complement one another? And if so, how so? And it's like, give me an expert here. Talk a little more about that nexus. But as far as like, now I'm going to like hike 10 hours into the Grand Canyon so that we can, like, fuck no. I don't care what my buddy did. I am not hiking overnight. Like, you're gonna have to pull the wire off my cold, dead body at the bottom of a ravine to get that confession. That is not me.
Yeah. What did you think about that scene, Toby? Warren hiking with him down to the Grand Canyon. We hear the tape, and he's basically cajoling his friend Mark, and he's like, here, if you wrote the notes, throw this rock. If you started a fire, throw this rock. He sounds like, it's like Mr. Rogers doing interrogation.
He's like, we need him to have a noise on the tape.
Did you do the interview downtown?
A rock hits the ground.
Did you write the letters to the press and to the...
Another rock bounces off the canyon floor. Warren skips the third question and goes straight to the heart of the matter.
Did you start any fires?
I give him credit for doing it because even if it had occurred to me, I'd be like, no fucking way this thing is going to work. Like, he's just going to laugh in my face. But in fact, for whatever reason, he does do it, which is bizarre. Yeah, I don't know. I've hiked that trail.
With an arsonist?
Not with an arsonist. Well, I don't know. It's with my now wife.
You didn't throw a rock.
This is the thing I was thinking, Toby, is that he had this, it's like 8 hours, right, to get down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. That's what he said.
Yeah.
And then at what point during the 16 hours of walking or whatever, 20 hours of walking, did he get this confession and then have to finish the hike with the guy who just confessed to like multiple felonies to him? That's what I kept thinking about.
Yeah,
I'd be like, no, you go first.
There's a lot going on there. And it's like this weird hike where if you're used to just like hiking mountains, like you go up and then you go down, and in the Grand Canyon, you go down and you're like, oh shit, I've got to walk all the way back up again.
Yes.
Like for the end of it. So yeah, I mean, that must have been a really long walk up, you know, with that kind of information. Like, I guess you're constantly being passed or followed by FBI people, like dressed up like hikers. And if you do that actual trail, they don't talk about this, but they also have like burro rides that go down that trail.
Yes.
So when you're at the top, like 10% of it or whatever, you're just inhaling burro shit the entire time you're walking, and you're walking up. So it's like closer to your face than it normally would be.
Donkey ass.
Anyway, I mean, for Warren, it seems like that was like a pretty courageous thing to do because it doesn't really seem like he's cut out for that kind of work based on everything else you hear about him. But, you know, he does it. It comes across like, I don't know, maybe he could have spent a little more time on it, but like, it's a great betrayal, right? It's his best friend.
Yeah.
And maybe one of his few friends. And it's a tough one, right?
Yeah.
And you're spending 8 hours walking down, mulling it over about having to do it. And then you go back up again and you're like walking with the secret knowledge that you just betrayed your best friend who's walking either right behind you or right in front of you. I mean, that's got to be a pretty emotionally intense day.
So, Laura, this guy got an 18-year sentence, right? And then turns out, and I hope for goodness sakes that this reporter found out that he was dead at the beginning of the podcast and was just pretending that he didn't know he was dead at the end of the podcast, because that's some shoddy journalism if you go into a story thinking you're going to be able to talk to a guy without checking to see if he's alive.
A lot of people didn't know that. And they explain why.
Yeah, but...
Yeah, but those people aren't making a 6-part podcast.
Yeah, you might do your due diligence first, Kevin.
For Sony Entertainment.
You find out at some point.
You do find... Actually, Kevin and I did the opposite, where we thought somebody we wrote about in one of our books was dead, and like we were sure of it, and it turns out no. Alive.
Not while we were writing the book, though.
No.
Yeah, anyway.
No. Anyway, so Laura, there's this whole then endeavor to find out why, right?
Right.
What did you think of that part of the podcast? I'm always a little bit confounded by the search for why, especially when someone's done their time.
Well, I found this frustrating. A couple different things. Number one, he's like, 18 years was such a long sentence and murderers don't get that. I'm like, murderers get more than 18 years. Maybe attempted murderers, but here where we live in New Hampshire, murderers are getting like 30 years. You know, like
I guarantee you in Arizona they get time.
Yeah, I was like, and I'm like, 18 years. Let's see. There were 11 expensive homes burned. I'm like, these are felony charges. 18 years doesn't really seem that out of line for this. So that kind of, I was like, okay, but whatever. But the whole, we're going to go talk to him and get the whole story. And they're like, whoops. he's dead. Now we're only going to be able to talk to people who know him to see if we can figure out why. And all they want to talk about is like, oh, he's doing the good work now. He loves Jesus. And I'm like, so I felt a little bit frustrated because I felt like going into this is essentially a retelling of a story that you can read about or watch little video clips all over the internet. It happened 25 years ago. And it would have been interesting if they had been able to go and speak with him. And now he's had some distance and now he wants to come clean. But the fact that we don't have access to him, am I the only one at the end of this who's like frustrated with not really feeling like,
well, we can't know. That's the whole thing is we can't know.
That's the thing is I was frustrated. I was just like, well, why do you promise that we're going to learn this if we're not going to?
Well, he throws out his theory, right? His take is that Mark feels a need for attention and feels a need for control. And this is how it kind of plays out. But it kind of feels like you can say that about any high profile crime, basically. Like, it doesn't feel like much of an insight to me. And again, he's brought up the stuff about the pornography, which he does not try and tie in at all, even though from what little I know about arsons, there's often like a sexual component to it amongst certain kinds of arsonists. So, in the end, I feel like if you had said what would prompt somebody, what would be like sort of the safest conclusion to make about an arsonist is doing high profile arsons, it would be like, well, he wants attention and he wants like a sense of control. And so like when that is actually what sort of conclusion is that was the motivation, it doesn't really feel like much. It just feels like sort of paint by numbers or whatever. It could actually be true, but then you just spent 6 episodes and I would assume like a year of your life looking into this guy. And this is what you kind of came up with. So yeah, it was disappointing. Like I didn't feel when it was over, I didn't feel like I had much of a sense of it. And you don't even really have much of a sense of, was it because there was this house being built in his neighborhood and he didn't like it? Like even that kind of stuff, like just seemed to sort of fall by the wayside. And instead you got this sort of abstraction that wasn't really all that interesting.
See, I actually enjoyed this part of it. Like I said earlier about like coming back to the whole pornography angle. And I thought, it made it a little better than just going back with all the old talking heads about what happened. Only part because like, you're right. I certainly didn't buy the motive that they did give. I thought it was kind of flimsy. So
he wanted
I was
to be Walter Cronkite, so instead he decided to start fires.
Well, I mean, like the official "this is why you're going to jail" story seemed incomplete, and I did appreciate the effort to try to do that. The famous one for me is like Sweet Bobby. We're like, we're going to tell you why, and I'm like, no, you're not. Which is why I was the only thumbs down on Sweet Bobby podcast because I thought that was just that's not going to happen. And I don't know if Sam like really uncovers it, but he certainly, brings up enough data points where you're like, yeah, this probably isn't about environmentalism.
Yeah, it was interesting to me when he talked to his son, and his son were like, my parents weren't really religious. They just went to church and did Bible study. I'm like, what do you think being religious means? I mean, it's for real. And he's like, they were liberal. Sometimes he'd walk around without his shirt. I'm like, okay.
Oh,
so did Jesus, by the way. So, Kevin, just one final thought.
Yeah.
Apparently, 9/11 could have been stopped if this guy hadn't been setting fires.
Oh, yeah, because FBI agent Terry Kearns, who was in Arizona, I think the line from the podcast was like, he was onto this little-known terrorist named Osama bin Laden. That's right. Nobody knew about Osama bin Laden except for this guy in Arizona. Right. I mean, Toby's going to back me up on this one.
He bombed the World Trade Center years before.
Yes. And anybody looking into terrorism, international terrorism, they knew he was a potential bad actor. But it's like, Terry, the guys that you were checking out also had nothing to do with 9/11. So I know sort of it's a collective failure of imagination or whatever, and everybody could have been doing more. But just go to sleep at night. It's okay. You don't need to toss and turn at this point. You really weren't going to save everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of felt like A, it's ridiculous. And then B, it was just like another thing you can throw on Mark to like show what an evil dick he was.
Right. I hate when people get called evil. I hate that. When he was like, there's evilness in him. I'm like, I hate that. That is like, I mean, someone can be a bad person. Someone can have done bad things. But the word evil is so loaded with like cultural meaning and like evangelical flavor. Like, I hate it when people say that. And he was like, yeah, there's an evil in him. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, it's ludicrous. Yeah, I think it was just, again, it's like you're taking a guy who burned a few houses and you're trying to make him into this
terrorist,
horrible menace. Well, he was an eco-terrorist, and we probably could have stopped 9/11 if only he wasn't lighting fires, because I had a line on some Muslims who were learning to fly planes, and yada yada yada. 9/11 doesn't happen. Is ridiculous.
What's up, podcast listeners? It's Tinks, host of the It's Me Tinks podcast. Join me weekly on It's Me Tinks as I dive into topics like relationships, why it's okay to feel lonely, fighting summer comparison, and pop culture's hottest takes. I don't shy away from getting candid about my personal experiences, and I want to share all the advice I have learned with you. I'm even joined by some of my friends like Claudia Oshry, Connor Wood, and Amanda Hirsch each Friday for our new Office Hours episodes. You can listen to It's Me Tinks every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to follow the show so you don't miss an episode.
Planning a trip this year? Travel smarter and connect deeper by learning the local language with Rosetta Stone. With over 30 years of experience, Rosetta Stone's immersive, intuitive method helps you live the language, not just memorize it. Choose from over 25 languages, including Spanish, French, Japanese, and more. Their true accent speech recognition technology gives real-time feedback to help perfect your pronunciation. No translations, just natural learning that builds from words to phrases to full conversations. Whether you have 5 minutes or an hour, you can learn anytime on desktop or mobile. Get a lifetime membership and unlock all 25 languages. Learn as much as you want, whenever you want. Rosetta Stone. Learn confidently. Connect authentically. Don't wait. Unlock your language learning potential now. Listeners can grab Rosetta Stone's lifetime membership for 50% off. That's unlimited access to 25 language courses for life. Visit rosettastone.com/pod50 to get started and claim your 50% off today. Don't miss out. Go to rosettastone.com/pod50 and start learning today.
We all belong outside. We're drawn to nature, whether it's the recorded sounds of the ocean we doze off to, or the succulents that adorn our homes. Nature makes all of our lives, well, better. Despite all this, we often go about our busy lives removed from it. But the outdoors is closer than we realize. With All Trails, you can discover trails nearby and explore confidently with offline maps and on-trail navigation. Download the free app today.
At Strayer University, we help students like you go from will I to why not. For over 130 years, we've been innovating higher education to make it more affordable, accessible, and attainable so you can reach your goals. Go from thinking, can I, to yes, I can, and keep striving. Visit strayer.edu to learn more. Strayer University is certified to operate in Virginia by Chev and has many campuses, including at 2121 15th Street North in Arlington, Virginia.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out the podcast, The Arsonist Next Door? Laura Bricker, thumbs up or thumbs down for this podcast?
I'm going to go mild thumbs down with this. If you just want like a straight retelling of a 25-year-old case of a serial arsonist and you didn't know about it before, you might want to listen to this podcast. For me, I was frustrated because I feel like if you're looking at a case a quarter of a century later, like it's time to get some perspective on it, and maybe some new telling of the story and some insight into more than was already out there in other media that's covered this case. And I just felt like this wasn't done for me in like a super creative way. It was kind of like your standard true crime podcast, which is fine because there's people that like to listen to that. For me, I think we consume so much media that I'm looking for something that's got a little bit more of a spark. Did you see how I did that? A little bit more of a spark
I see what you did there.
Keep my interest and make me want to listen to the next episode and make me like curious and feel like I left with, oh, that was really interesting, or maybe some new insight into what happened. And I think, for me, I was just frustrated with this because I felt like there was an opportunity to perhaps gain more perspective, but it wasn't fully realized. So at the end, I just felt kind of frustrated by this podcast. So that's a mild thumbs down for me.
Toby Ball, thumbs up or thumbs down for The Arsonist Next Door?
Yeah, I've been thinking about like what I wanted to do with this, because the reality is, to me, there's a few like parts of this that were pretty interesting. There's a thing about a journalist having an exclusive interview with somebody who may or may not be the arsonist. That was interesting. There's a few other parts that are interesting. He's done enough research that I wish there was a little more thinking that kind of went on in making this, I guess. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of stuff that could have been pushed back on that wasn't pushed back on. It seems like, he's willing to take the police line on a lot of things, sort of unquestioningly. For being this intensely involved in reporting the case, I just didn't feel like the insights that came out of this were very compelling. So I guess I'm kind of a thumb sideways. I mean, it's put together fine. The writing is fine. It's an easy listen. But I just think it could have been thought through a little bit more. There could have been some more pushback or just sort of examining things that people say that don't seem to make much sense at the time.
Kevin Flynn.
Yeah, I'm going to go mild thumbs up. I mean, it's a fine podcast, completely serviceable story here. I think that we have had other looks at arson crimes before, and I was just thinking, this has some really interesting sequences. There's this part where we have a journalist breaking the story and how they laid the trap and how they got the confession and, different things like that distinguished itself from other arson crimes. I don't know if there's enough there that's kind of like, oh, wow, this is really spectacular. So Laura used the term didn't have spark. Yeah, that's it. It wasn't, for some reason, it just didn't sort of become electric. It was, perfectly fine. It really didn't do anything badly.
Didn't fan your flames?
It didn't fan my flames.
Didn't light my fire.
Didn't light my fire. There was smoke, but I don't know. To me, it didn't do anything badly. I thought it was put together well, which is why I'm a thumbs up, but it isn't spectacular. I don't think that, there's just something about it that just didn't sort of do it for me beyond what was sort of there. It's a couple of really interesting parts to the original story that I'm glad they covered, but sort of when you put it all together, it doesn't, it's not combustible, we'll say.
All right. I'm a thumb sideways. Kevin, I agree largely with just about everything you said. And the only reason I'm not a thumbs up, can I be really transparent with you? It's because when you do the newsletter, you do the thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways. And sometimes I'm afraid to do mild thumbs up, but then it looks like this in the newsletter. I'm not enough of a thumbs up.
Oh, I do. The thumb is in a smaller font, so it is a milder thumbs.
So I have to go thumb sideways because this is not bad. Sam Anderson's a very good host. The story is serviceably told. It sounds good. There's some very interesting elements, as you said, but ultimately there were no, one of the things that you look for when you're doing a story sometimes is the story has to be so interesting, on its own, that you don't have to tie it to anything bigger or why would people be interested in this? Or the story has to be, a story that is of interest because of this larger idea. And this wasn't an interesting enough story to be the first kind, and it never got tied to any kind of larger ideas either. So for me, that was just a missing log in the fire. So I'm bad. I'm thumb sideways on the Arsonist Next Door.
I think the word cloud from this review is going to be fine.
So stupid.
Serviceable, and paint by numbers, which came up twice in our discussion. All right.
Now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call the Crime of the Week.
Crime of the Week!
There was a recent kerfuffle at a grocery store in Thailand when a celebrity popped in. No, it wasn't anyone from the cast of The White Lotus. It was a wild elephant looking for something to eat. The male elephant, known as Plai Byung Lek, has been stomping around the nearby national park for about 30 years. He's been known to wander across the road and open windows of houses in search for food. But this is the first time he's visited the grocery store. The pachyderm didn't trample anything. He just slowly tucked his head under the top of the open well entrance and started rooting around. He grabbed several bags of sweet rice crackers and some dried bananas before park workers were able to back him out and send him on his way. There are about 4,000 wild elephants in Thailand. As farmers and developers continue to encroach on their national habitat, these giant vegetarians are forced to find food in unexpected places. So, panel, it makes sense that a peckish pachyderm would pick up some snacks at the store, but what is the next thing this elephant will pick up at the grocer? Laura Bricker.
Well, based on this review we just did, I think this elephant is going to get some potato chips, and they are actually going to take on these people that are encroaching upon their territory with a little fire from those chips.
Toby Ball, what's the next thing this elephant will pick up at the grocery store?
Beers.
What about you, Kevin?
Well, if he's going to get the Nutter Butters, he also has to get milk. to wash it down, right? Peanut butter. So, almond butter. You remember that ad.
That's what the beer's for.
Yeah, I'm so proud of you, Kevin, for not making like a gigantic condom joke. I was certain. That's what was coming, like the Magnum. I'm so glad you didn't say it. Thank you very much.
Those are endangered species. They shouldn't be using condoms.
Man. All right, that's going to do it for us, Laura Bricker.
Mention the IUD, though.
If folks want to find you on social media, Laura, how can they look for you?
You can find me at Laura Bricker on Instagram and Blue Sky.
What about you, Toby? How can you be found online?
At TobyBallNH on Blue Sky.
What about you, Kevin?
I'm at Kevin P. Flynn. P is for Pachyderm.
I'm at Reb Lavoie on Blue Sky. If you want to follow me on X, that's mostly Karen Reed and journalism stuff for me over there. But Blue Sky is the real me, as is my Instagram at Reb Lavoie. But mostly I encourage you to join our incredible Facebook discussion group. We've got a bunch of new members this week. Hello. Just go to our regular Facebook page, hit join the group. If you can say any one of our first names of the four of us, we will let you in. Get episodes early and ad-free and everything else we make at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. Our theme song was composed and performed by Ty Gibbons, and our editor is the truly terrific Livy Burdett. The EP of this show is Kevin. This show was recorded in Studio C, the closet in our New Hampshire basement, where we also embed secret messages in our stories to entice criminals to meet us in public parks. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later. He was a real Judas, huh?
I was going to say, this probably won't make the podcast, but do you think at anywhere like the 10 hours is going around, do you think he'd ever turn and just said, hey, so do you think my daughter's hot?
Yeah, exactly.
So as long as we're like laying our souls bare.
Throw this rock.
Yeah.
If you've been a pervert.
Okay.
Partners in Crime Media.
What's up, podcast listeners? It's Tinks, host of the It's Me Tinks podcast. Join me weekly on It's Me Tinks as I dive into topics like relationships, why it's okay to feel lonely, fighting summer comparison, and pop culture's hottest takes. I don't shy away from getting candid about my personal experiences, and I want to share all the advice I have learned with you. I'm even joined by some of my friends like Claudia Oshry, Connor Wood, and Amanda Hirsch each Friday for our new Office Hours episodes. You can listen to It's Me Tinks every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to follow the show so you don't miss an episode.